This video will review the guest policy in residence. Resident students have the privilege of inviting guests to stay with them in residence, and they have the responsibility to ensure that their guests are properly signed in, and with them at all times. Residents can register their guests online in advance or at their residence desk, which is where they can pick up their guest wristband. Residents are permitted to have no more than 2 guests, and guests are welcome to stay for a maximum of 3 consecutive nights per week. Guests are not permitted if the host residence is subject to guest probation, the guest being registered is posted from any residence, a resident's roommate, if applicable, has not agreed to host an overnight guest, and the guest being registered does not have proper ID, for example, a driver's license or a university and college student card. There are certain dates and times where guests are restricted from residence. These include Orientation Week, Homecoming, Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, and during exams. The residence life management team may have additional dates when guests are not allowed. A guest is considered to be any non-resident of the specific building they are visiting. For example, a Lambton student would be considered a guest in South Residence. Your role as residence life staff member is to ensure your community is aware of the guest policy in the process to sign in a guest. Ensure residents are upholding the guest policy. While on rounds and in the building, ask guests to show their wristbands to ensure the band is current. Check to make sure the guest is with the host they are signed in under. If not, escort them out of the building. Residence life staff have the authority to refuse or revoke a wristband to a guest whose behavior or level of intoxication is disruptive or contrary to the res community living standards. Issue a notice to vacate. A notice to vacate provides a written notice to the student that you are requiring them to vacate the building and not return. Notice to vacates can be found in your on-call bag. A paper copy is given to the student and carbon copy stays in the notebook. In consultation with your manager, you may restrict visiting privileges for a residence area or building. Address violations of the residence community living standards through a community resolution or incident report. You may be contacted by desk or guest table staff if a guest is overly intoxicated, unruly, uncooperative, or disrespectful towards individuals. Residence life staff are expected to work as a team with guest and desk table staff to ensure the guest policy is being followed by all residents. Residence life staff are expected to contact the manager on call in the following situations: when a situation cannot be easily resolved by residence life staff, when a minor under the age of 16 is in residence where a solution is not easily identifiable, when residence life staff want to remove guest privileges for a resident or a resident area, when guest table staff close before a scheduled end of shift, and to approve an exception to the guest policy, for example, permitting access to students with no ID, allowing intoxicated guests into residence, or guests remaining in residence for longer than 3 nights. Now, what does this all mean when you're on call? Here are a few of the situations you may face. If residence life staff come across an unregistered guest in residence, attempt to associate the individual with the resident. If there is no known resident association, the individual should be asked to vacate residence. If the individual lives in another residence area, collect their information and document the situation. If the guest is associated with another resident of that same hall, address the situation through the residence community living standards, which may result in a form of documentation. If residence life staff come across a guest who is behaving unruly, work with the guest and the resident they are associated with to get the behavior to stop. If the behavior does not stop immediately, ask the guest to leave and issue a notice to vacate. The associated resident may be addressed via the residence community living standards for any problematic behavior of their guest. Ensure the situation is documented. If residence life staff come across a guest who is overly intoxicated, they are not permitted in residence and should be denied entry or asked to leave. Assess if there is a need to contact medical or emergency personnel. If the guest lives in another residence area, ask that they return home and arrange assistance if needed. Call the residence life staff on call in that building as a heads up. If the intoxicated guest is not a resident and residence life staff are unable to find a solution or alternative accommodation, if there's inclement weather or if the individual refuses to leave, call the manager on call or campus community police as needed. If residence life staff come across a minor in residence after 10 p.m.